Welcome to Mystic Sleep Tales. Wherever you are, now, let yourself relax. Perhaps you are lying under a duvet or resting your head on a pillow, and the weariness of the day has finally lifted from your shoulders. At this hour, there is nothing that requires your attention. You are here, and that is enough. Your feet may be warm or cold under the covers, and both are perfectly fine. Just realize that they are there, that they carried you through another day, and that now they can rest. The world outside your window, whatever is within it, continues perfectly well without your watchful eye. The stars, if they are visible, do not need to be counted. The clouds, if they have gathered, will drift away on their own. The year, if it matters at all, and really it does not, might be somewhere in the reign of Queen Victoria, perhaps the 1860s or thereabouts, when the gas supply had been laid on in a great many of the finer houses across England, and when the care of gas fittings had become a quiet, steady occupation for those employed in the maintenance of large households. The house in question is one such dwelling, a broad and handsome residence set somewhere in the English countryside, not so grand as to be called a palace, but large enough to require a considerable number of rooms and a small staff of servants to look after them. It is not important to know the name of the house or the county in which it sits. What matters is only that it is there, solid and still, its walls thick with plaster and memory, its corridors long and dim, and that somewhere within it, in a room below the main staircase and along a passage that the family never troubles to walk, there is a maintenance room. This room is not large. It is perhaps 12 feet by 10, with a low ceiling of whitewashed plaster and a floor of flagstone that has been worn smooth by decades of footfall. There is a single window, set high in the wall, with wooden shutters that have been drawn nearly closed against the evening, though a narrow band of dark sky is still visible between the slats. Against one wall stands a sturdy workbench, its surface scarred and stained with years of honest use, and upon this bench, arranged with the sort of quiet orderliness that speaks of long habit, are the tools and materials of the caretaker's trade. There are soft cloths, folded into neat squares, some of plain cotton and others of chamois leather, each one well worn but scrupulously clean. There is a small jar of precipitated chalk paste, the sort used for polishing brass and copper, its lid set aside to reveal a smooth, pale compound within. There is a shallow tin of beeswax, slightly amber in color, giving off a faint sweetness that mingles with the other scents of the room. There is a pair of wick trimmers, their steel blades fine and precise, resting upon a piece of flannel. There is a ball of soft cotton yarn, used for replacing wicks, and beside it a spool of thin copper wire, coiled with the patience of someone who takes genuine care in the arrangement of small things. Along the opposite wall, upon a second, narrower bench, stand the lamps themselves. There are 6 of them tonight, each one removed from its place in the house and brought here for cleaning. They are gas lamps of varying design, though all share the essential features of their kind, a brass or copper base and stem, a burner assembly with its valve and jet, and a glass chimney or globe that shields the flame and directs the light. Some are wall brackets, their arms curving in a graceful arc. Others are pendant fittings, designed to hang from a ceiling fixture with scrolling arms and decorative knobs. One, somewhat larger than the rest, appears to be from a standing lamp, its base heavier and its chimney broader, with an etched pattern of trailing leaves upon the frosted glass. The glass chimneys have already been removed from their fittings and placed in a row upon the workbench, each one standing upright like a small, transparent pillar. In the low light of the single working lamp that illuminates the room, a modest oil lamp with a clean, steady flame. The glass chimneys catch and hold small points of gold, and their surfaces show the faint clouding of soot and residue that accumulates from the burning of coal gas. This is the residue that the caretaker will clean, carefully and thoroughly, chimney by chimney, until each one is as clear as it was on the day it was made. The caretaker himself is seated upon a wooden stool before the workbench, a man of perhaps 50 years, though his age is difficult to judge precisely, for his face carries that particular quality of steadiness that comes not from youth or age but from long acquaintance with a task one knows well. His name, let us say, is Mr. Hapsworth, though he is known below stairs simply as Hapsworth, without the courtesy of the title, except by the younger servants who address him as Sir out of a natural respect for his quiet authority. He has held his position in this house for more than 20 years, and in that time he has cleaned, repaired, adjusted, and maintained every lamp, every gas fitting, every brass fixture and copper pipe in the building. He knows the particular character of each lamp as a shepherd knows the faces of his flock, and he approaches his work with the unhurried precision of someone for whom the task itself is a form of contentment. He is wearing, as he always does in the evenings when he attends to this work, a plain brown waistcoat over a collarless shirt of white cotton, the sleeves rolled to his elbows, and a heavy canvas apron tied about his waist to protect his trousers from the chalk paste and the beeswax. His hands are broad and capable, the hands of someone who has spent a lifetime working with small, delicate things, and though his fingers are thick, they move with a surprising gentleness as he takes up the first glass chimney and holds it to the light. He turns it slowly, tilting it this way and that, examining the interior surface for the thin film of carbon that the gas flame deposits over time. The soot from coal gas is not the heavy, greasy soot of a coal fire but rather a fine, almost powdery residue, faintly yellowish in hue, that clings to the glass and gradually dims the light that passes through it. Left too long, it will thicken and discolor the chimney, and the lamp will give a dull, sulphurous glow rather than the clean, bright light that a well-maintained fitting should produce. Hapsworth has seen this many times in other houses where the lamps were left to the care of housemaids who had neither the time nor the training to attend to them properly, and he takes a quiet pride in the fact that every lamp in this house gives a light as pure and steady as the day it was installed. He sets the chimney upon the bench before him and takes up one of the cotton cloths, folding it into a pad that fits neatly within his palm. He dips it lightly into the jar of chalk paste, takes only the smallest amount, and then, with a slow, circular motion, begins to polish the interior of the chimney. The motion is even and unhurried, the cloth moving in steady arcs that travel from the base of the chimney toward the rim and back again, the chalk paste working gently against the glass, loosening the soot and lifting it away. The sound it makes is very faint, a soft, rhythmic whisper, barely louder than the breath of the man who produces it. Outside, the wind stirs. It is an autumn evening, and the air carries the first true chill of the season, though here in the maintenance room, with the door closed and the shutters drawn, the temperature is mild enough. The wind does not howl or gust but merely brushes against the shutters with a sound like the turning of a page, a light, intermittent touch that comes and goes without pattern or insistence. If there is rain, it is only the suggestion of rain, a dampness in the air rather than a downpour, and the occasional, barely perceptible tap of a droplet against the glass of the high window is as quiet as the ticking of a clock in another room. Hapsworth does not look up at the sound. His attention remains upon the chimney in his hands, upon the slow passage of the cloth across the glass, upon the gradual clearing of the surface as the soot is drawn away. There is a particular satisfaction in this, in watching the glass become transparent again, in seeing the light of the oil lamp on the bench begin to pass through more clearly, more fully, with each circuit of the cloth. It is a satisfaction that does not announce itself but simply settles into the body, into the hands and the shoulders, and the steady rhythm of the breathing, like the warmth of a hearth that one does not think about but simply feels. He completes the interior of the first chimney and turns it over to attend to the outside. The exterior surface is less soiled than the interior, for it is the inner wall that receives the direct deposit of the flame, but there are smudges here and there, fingerprints left from the last handling, and a faint greasiness that comes from the atmosphere of a house heated by coal fires and lit by gas. He applies the chalk paste to the exterior with the same unhurried care, the cloth gliding over the curved surface of the glass, following its contours as a hand might follow the shape of a smooth stone taken from a riverbed. When the polishing is done, he takes a second cloth, this one dry and very soft, a piece of old chamois that has been washed so many times it has the texture of silk, and he buffs the chimney with long, gentle strokes until the glass is perfectly clear and free of any residue from the paste. He holds it up once more to the light. It is, to his eye, satisfactory. The glass is as clean as water, and when he looks through it, the flame of the oil lamp on the bench appears as a steady, unbroken point of gold, without distortion or dimming. He sets the chimney down upon a clean cloth at the far end of the bench, where it will wait until all 6 have been cleaned and he can begin the work of reassembly. He reaches for the second chimney. It is slightly smaller than the first, a narrow cylinder with a gently flared top, the kind used in a wall bracket of the sort that might be found in a hallway or a dressing room. The soot upon this one is lighter, for it has been cleaned more recently, but Hapsworth treats it with exactly the same attention, the same slow, circular application of paste, the same patient buffing with the chamois cloth. There is no shortening of the process, no temptation to hurry because the task is easier. Each chimney receives its full measure of care, and the rhythm of the work remains constant, a gentle, unvarying pulse that fills the room as steadily as the ticking of a mantel clock. The oil lamp on the bench casts a warm, amber light across the workspace, and within this circle of illumination, the world is very small and very complete. The tools, the cloths, the glass chimneys, the brass fittings waiting their turn upon the opposite bench, these are all the elements of the evening, all the furniture of the present moment, and beyond this circle, the rest of the house is as remote and as irrelevant as a foreign country. The family, if they are at home, are in the drawing room or the dining room, occupied with their own concerns, and the other servants have retired to their quarters or are attending to the last duties of the day. Hapsworth is alone with his lamps, and this solitude, this quiet enclosure within the boundaries of a familiar and purposeful task, is as comfortable to him as a well-fitted coat. He finishes the second chimney and sets it beside the first. There is a small pause, a brief interval in which he straightens his back, rolls his shoulders once, and looks about the room with the calm, unhurried gaze of a man who is precisely where he wishes to be. The flagstone floor is cool and solid beneath his feet. The stool beneath him is worn to the shape of his sitting, its legs slightly uneven so that it tilts, almost imperceptibly, to the left, a tilt he has long since ceased to notice. The air in the room smells of chalk and beeswax, and the faint, not unpleasant scent of coal gas that clings to the brass fittings, a scent so familiar to him that it is less an odor than a signature, the particular fragrance of his occupation. He takes up the third chimney. This one is larger, belonging to the standing lamp with the etched pattern of leaves, and its glass is thicker and heavier in his hands. The etching creates small channels in the surface where soot tends to collect, and he will need to use a softer cloth and a lighter touch to clean these areas without scratching the pattern. He has done this many times before, of course, and his hands know the topography of this particular chimney as well as they know the back of a familiar door handle, but he does not allow this familiarity to make him careless. If anything, the familiarity sharpens his attention, for he knows exactly where the soot will have gathered and exactly how much pressure is required to remove it without harming the glass. The wind outside touches the shutters again, a gentle, exploratory pressure, as though the night itself were leaning against the house, curious but not insistent. Hapsworth hears it without attending to it. The sound is simply part of the texture of the evening, no different from the soft scrape of cloth on glass or the faint creak of the stool as he shifts his weight. These are the sounds of a room at rest, a room in which nothing extraordinary is happening and nothing extraordinary is expected to happen, and in this ordinariness there is a kind of peace that is deeper and more durable than the peace of extraordinary moments. He works the cloth into the etched channels of the third chimney, following the curves of the trailing leaves with the tip of his finger wrapped in the soft cotton, pressing just enough to draw the soot from the grooves without forcing the paste into the finest lines of the pattern. It is delicate work, requiring patience and a steady hand, and he performs it with the same quiet concentration that a watchmaker might bring to the cleaning of a particularly fine mechanism. The trailing leaves emerge from beneath the film of carbon as he works, their lines sharp and graceful against the clearing glass, and though he has seen this pattern hundreds of times, he notices once again how pleasing it is, how the engraver who cut it must have studied real leaves to achieve such a faithful likeness of their branching forms. So let us journey together, you and I, are not with great speed or purpose, but rather slowly, like someone walking aimlessly on a road at twilight. We will go to a place quiet, warm, and utterly unhurried, a place where the only occupation is simple, repetitive work done with care and patience, and where the hours pass as smoothly as wool passed through a ring. We are going to a room. A long time ago, in England, on a particular evening, in a particular house, in a particular room. But there's no rush. We'll get there when we get there. And when we do, you'll find it's exactly the kind of place where one can fall asleep. There is something in this work, in the cleaning and restoring of things to their proper condition, that Hapsworth finds deeply restful. It is not the excitement of creation, for he does not make these lamps, nor is it the satisfaction of solving a problem, for there is no problem here, only the natural accumulation of use and the natural remedy of care. It is, rather, the contentment of maintenance, the quiet fulfillment of returning something to the state it was meant to occupy, and in doing so, participating in the steady, reliable turning of the household's daily life. The lamps will be cleaned and returned to their places, and tomorrow evening they will burn with a clear, bright light, and no one in the house will think about why, and this, to Hapsworth, is precisely as it should be. The best maintenance is invisible. The best care is the kind that never announces itself. He finishes the third chimney, buffs it with the chamois, holds it to the light, and is satisfied. The etched leaves are as clear and detailed as a drawing on a fresh sheet of paper, and the glass between them is as transparent as the air itself. He places it beside the first two, and the three chimneys stand in a row like small glass sentinels, catching the lamplight and holding it within their walls. The room is very quiet now. The wind has paused, or perhaps only shifted direction, and the shutters are still. The oil lamp burns without flicker, its flame a steady teardrop of gold above the brass burner. Hapsworth reaches for the fourth chimney, a globe rather than a cylinder, its shape rounder and more generous, like a soap bubble captured in glass. This is from one of the wall brackets in the library, a room that Hapsworth has always quietly admired, though he would never say so, for it is not his place to have opinions about the rooms of the house. But the library is a good room, a room of polished wood and leather bindings and the particular, drowsy warmth of a fire that is kept burning from October to April, and the globe from its lamp is always slightly more soiled than the others because the air in the library is thick with the fine dust of paper and the invisible exhalations of the coal fire. He begins to clean the globe, cradling it in one hand while the other applies the chalk paste in the same slow, circular motion. The roundness of the globe requires a different technique than the straight-sided chimneys, a gentle rocking of the wrist that allows the cloth to maintain contact with the curving surface, and Hapsworth adjusts to this variation without conscious thought, his body remembering what his mind need not articulate. The paste whispers against the glass. The clock that is not in this room but somewhere in the passage beyond the door marks the quarter hour with a single, distant chime, and Hapsworth registers it as one might register the call of a bird in a garden, a sound that belongs to the world but makes no demand upon him. While the chimneys are being cleaned, the brass fittings wait upon the opposite bench, and they, too, will receive their share of attention before the evening is through. Victorian brass, an alloy of copper and zinc, was immensely popular in the household fittings of this era, prized for its warm golden appearance and its durability, though it required regular polishing to prevent the tarnish that forms when the copper in the alloy reacts with the atmosphere. In a house lit by gas, the tarnish was hastened by the sulfuric compounds released during combustion, which could darken brass fittings and leave a thin, dull film upon their surfaces if they were not attended to with regularity. Hapsworth's method of polishing brass is the method he was taught as a young man, and it has not changed in 30 years, for the simple reason that it works. He uses the precipitated chalk paste, applied sparingly with a soft cloth, and he polishes in long, even strokes, always following the grain of any engraving or decoration rather than working against it. After the paste has done its work, he buffs the brass with a clean, dry cloth until it shines with that particular deep, honeyed luster that distinguishes well-maintained brass from the flashier, more superficial shine of a hasty polish. It is a glow rather than a glitter, a warmth rather than a brightness, and it speaks of care rather than effort. But the brass will come later. For now, the chimneys remain his occupation, and the fourth globe is turning clear beneath his cloth, its curved surface shedding its veil of soot to reveal the plain, honest beauty of clean glass. He works without haste, and the minutes pass without his counting them, for time in this room is not a thing to be measured or managed but simply a medium through which the work proceeds, as water is a medium through which a fish moves, invisibly and without resistance. The stool creaks faintly as he leans forward to examine the interior of the globe more closely. There is a small spot, just above the equator of the glass, where the soot has been deposited more thickly, perhaps because of a slight irregularity in the gas flame that caused it to burn hotter on one side. He applies a little more paste to his cloth and works the spot with careful, concentric circles, gradually reducing it until the glass is uniformly clear. He nods to himself, a small, private gesture of approval, and continues with the rest of the surface. Outside, the evening deepens. The narrow band of sky visible between the shutters has darkened from grey to a deep, soft blue that is almost black, and the first stars, if they are present, are hidden behind the clouds that have gathered over the countryside. The temperature in the room has dropped very slightly, just enough to be perceptible as a coolness upon the back of the hands, and Hapsworth, without interrupting his work, shifts his feet upon the flagstone and draws them a little closer together, an unconscious adjustment that his body makes on its own behalf while his mind remains engaged with the glass and the cloth. He finishes the fourth globe and places it in the line. For down, 2 remaining. The small row of cleaned glass catches the lamplight and sends it dancing, very faintly, across the whitewashed ceiling, a constellation of warm, golden points that move and settle as the air in the room shifts. It is a pretty thing, this incidental play of light, though Hapsworth does not pause to admire it. He has seen it many times, and its beauty, like so many things in a well-ordered life, is not diminished by repetition but rather absorbed into the general atmosphere of the room, becoming part of its character, part of its quiet, reliable charm. The 5th chimney is the simplest of the lot, a plain cylinder of clear glass without etching or ornamentation, from a wall bracket in one of the upstairs corridors. It is the kind of fitting that a visitor might pass 100 times without noticing, a functional thing, designed to give light where light is needed without drawing attention to itself. Hapsworth cleans it with the same thoroughness he has brought to the others, though the task takes less time, for the surface is smooth and the soot comes away easily. When he holds it to the light, it is as clear as a window on a summer morning, and the flame of the oil lamp passes through it without impediment. He sets it down and reaches for the 6th and final chimney. This one is from a pendant fitting in the morning room, a chimney of gently frosted glass with a scalloped rim, rather elegant in its design and somewhat more delicate in its construction. The frosted surface, achieved by treating the glass with hydrofluoric acid, requires particular care when cleaning, for the matte finish can be damaged by excessive rubbing or by the use of too much paste. Hapsworth takes only the barest amount of chalk upon his cloth and works it over the frosted glass with the lightest possible touch, as though he were dusting the wings of a moth rather than polishing a lamp chimney. His breathing has slowed to match the gentleness of his movements, and the room is very still, very quiet, very warm, as though the house itself were holding its breath. The wind returns, a soft exhalation that presses against the shutters and then withdraws, and somewhere in the passage beyond the door, the clock marks another quarter hour. Hapsworth does not count the chimes. The evening is not a race to be run but a road to be walked, and he walks it at his own pace, attending to each step with the fullness of his attention, allowing the work to fill his hands and his mind and to leave no room for the sort of restless, purposeless thought that can make an evening feel long and empty. The frosted chimney clears slowly, the faint cloudiness of the soot dissolving into the cloth, and the gentle, pearlescent surface of the glass emerging beneath it like a landscape seen through clearing mist. When it is done, Hapsworth buffs it with the chamois, holding it up to the light not to see through it, for the frosted glass does not permit that, but to confirm that the surface is uniformly clean, that there are no streaks or patches where the soot has been incompletely removed. The scalloped rim catches the lamplight and sends small crescents of gold across the back of his hand, and he turns the chimney slowly, examining each scallop in turn, before setting it down at the end of the row with a quiet, definitive click of glass upon wood. 6 chimneys, cleaned and polished and arranged in a line upon the bench. The work has taken perhaps 45 minutes, though Hapsworth has not thought about the time. He sits for a moment, his hands resting upon his knees, and looks at the row of chimneys with the calm, unhurried satisfaction of a man who has done a thing well. The lamplight moves through them and over them, and each one holds its own small portion of the light, its own reflection, its own particular shape of luminance, and together they form a quiet display of something that is not quite art and not quite utility, but somewhere in the gentle territory between the two. He rises from the stool, slowly, for his knees are not as quick as they once were, and crosses the room to the opposite bench where the brass fittings wait. The act of standing, after sitting so long in one position, brings a pleasant awareness of his body, a stretching of muscles that had settled into the shape of the work, and he rolls his shoulders once and flexes his fingers before taking up the first of the brass pieces. It is a wall bracket, its arm curving outward in a graceful S shape that terminates in a cup designed to hold the burner assembly. The bracket is of solid brass, not plated, and its surface shows the dull, slightly greenish tarnish that is the natural consequence of exposure to the atmosphere of a gaslit house. The scrollwork along the arm is fine but not overly elaborate, the product of a competent foundry rather than an artist's workshop, and it has a pleasing solidity in the hand, a reassuring weight that speaks of good materials and honest craftsmanship. Hapsworth places the bracket upon the workbench, takes up a fresh cloth, and applies a small amount of the chalk paste. He begins at the base of the bracket, where it would be fixed to the wall, and works outward along the arm, following the S-curve with the cloth, pressing just firmly enough to work the paste into the surface of the metal without forcing it into the crevices of the scrollwork, where it might be difficult to remove. The brass darkens momentarily as the paste makes contact, the tarnish lifting from the surface and transferring to the cloth, and then, as he continues to work the same area, the metal begins to brighten, the warm gold of the brass emerging from beneath the dullness like sunlight breaking through cloud. The sound of brass being polished is different from the sound of glass being polished. It is slightly lower in pitch, slightly more resonant, as though the metal were humming very faintly beneath the cloth. It is a sound that Hapsworth associates with the deep satisfaction of this particular part of his work, for brass, once polished, has a warmth and a depth that glass does not possess, a living quality that seems to respond to the touch of the hand and the light of the room. Glass is beautiful, yes, but it is a cool, distant beauty, the beauty of something that exists apart from you. Brass is warmer, closer, more intimate. It is a beauty that you can feel beneath your fingers. He works his way along the arm of the bracket, cleaning each section thoroughly before moving on to the next, and the brass gleams behind him like a trail of gold. When he reaches the scrollwork, he switches to a smaller cloth, wrapped tightly around the tip of a wooden dowel, and uses this to work the paste into the curves and hollows of the decoration. The dowel allows him to apply the paste precisely where it is needed, without leaving residue in the places where it is not, and the scrollwork emerges from the tarnish with all its detail intact, each curve and flourish as sharp and defined as the day the piece was cast. After the paste, the buffing. He takes the chamois and works it over the entire surface of the bracket, using long, even strokes that follow the length of the arm and short, gentle dabs for the scrollwork. The brass glows beneath his hand, and when he holds the bracket up to the light of the oil lamp, it shines with that deep, honeyed luster that he values above all other qualities in well-maintained metalwork. He turns it over, checks the underside, finds it satisfactory, and places it upon a clean cloth at the far end of the bench. The next piece is a pendant fitting, more elaborate than the wall bracket, with 3 short arms radiating from a central baluster. Each arm terminates in a decorative knob, and the baluster itself is adorned with turned rings and a small finial at the top. The tarnish on this piece is heavier, for the pendant hangs in the center of the morning room where the atmosphere is particularly dense with the products of combustion, both from the gas lamps and from the coal fire that burns in the grate on chilly evenings. The sulfuric compounds that are a byproduct of coal-gas combustion, Hapsworth knows, are particularly corrosive to brass, and he attends to this piece with extra care, applying the paste in 2 passes rather than 1 to ensure that all of the tarnish is removed. The room grows quieter still, if such a thing is possible. The wind has settled, and the shutters are motionless. The oil lamp burns with perfect steadiness, its flame a small, unwavering point of light. Hapsworth's hands move over the brass pendant with the slow, deliberate grace of a craftsman who is entirely absorbed in his work, and the only sounds are the soft friction of cloth upon metal and the occasional, barely audible creak of the wooden stool as he adjusts his position. He polishes the baluster first, working the paste around the turned rings with the care of a man tracing the lines of a familiar map. The rings are decorative rather than functional, a series of ridges and grooves that catch the light and give the fitting a sense of visual richness, and the soot tends to gather in the grooves, where it sits like dark thread in a pale fabric. He uses the dowel-wrapped cloth for this work, pressing the paste into each groove and then drawing it out again with a clean section of the cloth, and the grooves emerge, one by one, clean and bright, their pattern regular and pleasing against the smooth surface of the baluster. The 3 arms receive the same attention, each one polished from base to tip, each decorative knob buffed until it catches the light and holds it. Hapsworth works with the patience of a man for whom patience is not a virtue to be practiced but a natural condition, as unremarkable and as essential as breathing. He does not hurry because there is nothing to hurry toward. He does not slow because there is nothing to slow for. He simply works, steadily and thoroughly, and the brass accumulates its brightness beneath his hands like a field accumulating dew. When the pendant fitting is complete, he sets it beside the wall bracket and takes up the 3rd piece of brass, a smaller bracket from one of the upstairs rooms. And then the 4th. And then the 5th. The work continues, piece by piece, lamp by lamp, and the evening continues with it, the minutes falling away as quietly as the soot from the glass chimneys, each one indistinguishable from the last, each one sufficient unto itself. Between the polishing of the brass and the checking of the fittings, there is a pause, a natural breathing space in the rhythm of the evening's work, and Hapsworth uses it to attend to the wicks. The gas lamps of this era, particularly those using the older flat flame burners rather than the newer incandescent mantles that Carl or von Welsbach would not perfect until the late 1880s, required their wicks, or more precisely their burner jets, to be kept clean and free of obstruction. The gas flowed through narrow openings in the burner head, and these openings could become partially blocked by the deposits left behind by the impurities in coal gas, principally sulfur and ammonia compounds, which formed a hard, crusty residue around the edges of the jets. Hapsworth keeps a set of fine brass needles for this purpose, thin as hairs and slightly flexible, which he uses to clear the individual holes in the burner heads. It is fiddly, exacting work, requiring good eyesight and a steady hand, and he brings the oil lamp closer to illuminate the tiny openings as he works. Each burner head has a double row of small holes, arranged in either a straight line, for the flat bat-swing burner, or in a circle, for the argon-style burner, and each hole must be cleared individually, the needle inserted gently to dislodge any obstruction without enlarging the opening or damaging the edge of the metal. He picks up the first burner head and holds it close to the light. The holes are very small, no larger than the point of a pin, and some of them show the telltale narrowing that indicates a partial blockage. He selects one of the finer needles, inserts it into the first hole, and twists it gently, feeling the slight resistance of the deposit before it gives way and the needle passes through cleanly. He moves to the next hole, and the next, working his way along the row with the methodical, unhurried precision that characterizes everything he does. The task is repetitive, and the repetition itself becomes a kind of meditation, a gentle narrowing of attention that excludes everything except the needle, the hole, and the tiny, almost imperceptible sensation of the metal clearing. The world shrinks to the size of a pinhole, and within that miniature world, there is a complete and satisfying drama being enacted, the drama of obstruction and clearance, of dirt and cleanliness, of function impeded and function restored. It is not a grand drama, nor a dramatic one, but it is real, and it is enough. The wind stirs again outside, and a few drops of rain tap against the high window, tentative and widely spaced, like the first notes of a melody that has not yet decided whether it wishes to be played. The sound is barely present, and Hapsworth hears it only as a faint addition to the ambient quiet of the room, a gentle punctuation to the silence between one needle stroke and the next. The rain does not intensify. It remains at the threshold of perception, a suggestion rather than a statement, and its intermittent tapping blends with the other small sounds of the room, the creak of the stool, the whisper of cloth, the soft clink of metal, to form a kind of lullaby, a quiet, a rhythmic music that has no composer and no audience but is played nonetheless. Hapsworth finishes the first burner head and takes up the second. His eyes, accustomed to the close work, find the tiny holes without difficulty, and his hand, guided by decades of practice, moves the needle with an economy of motion that wastes neither time nor effort. He does not rush, but neither does he linger. Each hole is cleared, tested, and moved past, and the burner head accumulates its cleanness as the brass accumulates its polish, quietly, steadily, without fanfare or display. There are 6 burner heads in all, one for each lamp, and they are of different designs, reflecting the variety of gas fittings that were available to the Victorian household. The flat bat-swing burner, with its single row of small holes that produce a flat, fan-shaped flame, is the simplest and the oldest design, dating from the early decades of gas lighting. The fishtail burner, with 2 converging jets that produce a broader, more luminous flame, is somewhat more advanced. And the argand-style burner, with its circular arrangement of holes and its central draft tube, produces the brightest light of all, though it is also the most complex and the most demanding of maintenance. Hapsworth attends to each type with the appropriate technique, varying the angle and depth of his needle work according to the size and arrangement of the holes, and the burner heads emerge from his care clean and ready for use, their jets unobstructed, their metal bright. He places each one back upon the bench beside its corresponding lamp body, and the 6 sets of components, brass fittings, burner heads, and glass chimneys, wait in their separate groupings for the reassembly that will come later in the evening. But not yet. There is no hurry. The evening is long, and the work is patient, and Hapsworth is in no rush to bring either one to a close. He returns to his stool, settles himself, and takes up one of the brass fittings again, not because it needs further polishing but because he wishes to check the valve assembly, the small brass tap that controls the flow of gas to the burner. These valves, like the burner jets, can become stiff or sticky with use, the accumulation of residue on the internal surfaces impeding the smooth turning of the tap, and Hapsworth makes it his practice to test each one during his evening cleaning sessions, ensuring that they turn freely and shut off completely when closed. He holds the fitting in one hand and turns the valve with the other, a slow, deliberate rotation from fully open to fully closed. The valve moves smoothly, without resistance or grating, and he nods to himself, satisfied. He tries the next one. This valve is slightly stiffer, and he takes a drop of fine oil from a small bottle on the bench and applies it to the stem, working the valve back and forth several times until the resistance eases and the tap turns freely. It is a small thing, this drop of oil, this minor adjustment, but it is the accumulation of small things that keeps a house in good order, and Hapsworth understands this better than most. He checks the remaining valves, finds them all satisfactory after similar small attentions, and returns the fittings to the bench. The oil lamp on the workbench flickers very slightly, a brief, almost imperceptible tremor of the flame, and then steadies again. The room is unchanged. The air is still. The shutters are still. The night, pressing gently against the walls of the house, is still, and within this stillness, within this quiet, unremarkable room at the end of a quiet, unremarkable corridor, Hapsworth sits and breathes and prepares to begin the reassembly of his lamps. The reassembly is, in its own way, as soothing as the cleaning. It is the counterpart to the disassembly that took place earlier in the evening, the gentle undoing now reversed, the separated parts brought back together into their proper whole. Hapsworth begins with the first wall bracket, the one with the graceful S-shaped arm and the scrollwork that he polished so carefully. He takes up the bracket in one hand and the burner head in the other, and he fits the burner head back into its seat at the end of the arm, turning it gently until it clicks into place with a small, precise sound, the sound of two things made to fit each other finding their alignment. Then the glass chimney. He lifts it from the row of clean chimneys, holding it carefully by the rim, and lowers it into the chimney holder at the top of the burner assembly. The chimney settles into its seat with a soft, barely audible whisper of glass against metal, and there it stands, upright and clear, ready to receive the flame that will fill it with light when the gas is turned on tomorrow evening. The completed lamp has a different presence than the sum of its parts. Where before there were brass components and glass cylinders arranged upon a bench, there is now a recognizable object, a thing with purpose and form, and the act of bringing it together has given it a quiet dignity that was absent when it was disassembled. Hapsworth holds the completed bracket up and turns it slowly, examining it from all angles. The brass glows in the lamplight. The glass chimney is perfectly clear. The burner head is clean and aligned. The valve turns smoothly. Everything is as it should be, and he sets the bracket down with the satisfaction of a man returning a well-read book to its place upon a shelf. He reaches for the next set of components and begins again. The pendant fitting, with its 3 arms and its baluster and its frosted chimney, requires a few more steps in the reassembly, for the arms must be properly aligned and the chimney must be seated with particular care because of the delicacy of its scalloped rim. Hapsworth attends to these details with the same unhurried precision that has characterized every moment of the evening's work, fitting each piece to its partner, testing each connection, ensuring that the completed lamp is not merely functional but as handsome and as well presented as the skill of his hands can make it. The rain outside has settled into a rhythm now, not heavy, not light, but steady, a soft, persistent tapping upon the glass of the high window and a gentle murmur upon the roof above. It is the kind of rain that falls without drama, the kind that the English countryside accepts with neither complaint nor celebration, the kind that simply is, as natural and as unremarkable as the grass upon which it falls. Hapsworth finds this rain agreeable. It fills the silence of the room without disturbing it, providing a gentle backdrop to his work, a quiet accompaniment that asks nothing of him but his continued presence in this warm, still room while the night goes on outside. He reassembles the third lamp, the standing lamp with the etched chimney, and the fourth, and the fifth. Each one receives the same thorough attention, the same careful fitting of parts, the same final inspection and quiet approval. The row of completed lamps grows along the bench, and the row of loose components diminishes, and the balance of the evening shifts, imperceptibly, from work to completion, from the doing of the task to the resting that follows the task, though the shift is so gradual that there is no clear boundary between the two. The sixth and final lamp is the simplest, the plain wall bracket with the unornamented chimney, and Hapsworth assembles it with the ease of long practice, the pieces coming together beneath his hands as naturally as the words of a familiar prayer. He sets it at the end of the row, and the 6 lamps stand complete, each one cleaned and polished and restored to full readiness, each one a small testament to the care and patience that have been invested in it this evening. Hapsworth sits back upon his stool and looks at the row of lamps. He does not admire them, exactly, for admiration implies a certain distance, a standing apart from the thing that is admired, and Hapsworth does not stand apart from his lamps. They are, in a sense, an extension of himself, of his hands and his skills and his years of quiet, diligent service, and the satisfaction he feels in looking at them is not the satisfaction of an observer but the satisfaction of a participant, of someone who has been part of the process that brought them to this state of cleanliness and readiness. The room has grown cooler. The hour is late, though how late Hapsworth does not know, for there is no clock in this room and the clock in the passage has fallen silent, or perhaps its chiming has simply become so familiar that it passes through his awareness without registering. He rises from the stool, slowly, carefully, and stretches his arms above his head, feeling the pleasant ache of muscles that have been held in one position for a long time. His back protests mildly, and he acknowledges the protest with a slight forward bend, a concession to the years that have accumulated since he first sat down at this bench as a young man. He begins to tidy the workbench, folding the used cloths and setting them aside for washing, recapping the jar of chalk paste, replacing the lid on the tin of beeswax, returning the fine brass needles to their case, and wiping down the surface of the bench with a damp cloth to remove any residue of paste or soot. Each action is performed with the same unhurried care that he has brought to the cleaning and polishing, for Hapsworth makes no distinction between the work itself and the preparation and clearing that surround it. It is all part of the same process, the same cycle of use and care and restoration, and each part is worthy of the same attention. The used cloths go into a small basket beside the bench, where they will be collected in the morning by one of the housemaids and taken to the laundry. The clean cloths, those that were not needed tonight, remain in their place on the shelf above the bench, folded and ready for the next session. The tools are arranged in their accustomed positions, each one in its place, each one clean and dry and fit for use. The workbench, when he has finished, is as orderly as it was when he sat down at the beginning of the evening, and this orderliness, this return to the starting condition, is the final satisfaction of the night, the closing of a circle that was opened when the first chimney was lifted from the first lamp. He turns to the lamps themselves. Tomorrow, he will carry them back to their places in the house, fitting each one to its bracket or pendant or stand, reconnecting the gas supply, and lighting each one in turn to confirm that it burns cleanly and brightly. But tonight, they will stay here, in the maintenance room, standing in their row upon the bench, and the morning light, when it comes, will find them waiting, clean and patient and ready. Hapsworth takes up the oil lamp from the bench and carries it to the door. He pauses there, one hand upon the latch, and looks back into the room. The 6 gas lamps stand in their row, their brass fittings glowing softly in the last light of the oil lamp, their glass chimneys dark and still. The workbench is clean. The floor is swept. The shutters are closed against the night. Everything is in its place, and the room, relieved of the need to be anything other than what it is, settles into the deep, untroubled stillness of a space that has fulfilled its purpose for the day. He opens the door and steps into the passage. The air here is cooler, and the flagstone floor is cold beneath his feet. The passage is dim, lit only by the oil lamp in his hand, and the shadows gather in the corners and along the walls, soft and deep and entirely without menace. The house is quiet around him. The family has retired. The other servants are in their rooms. The only sounds are the distant whisper of rain upon the roof and the faint creak of the old house settling into its nighttime posture, that particular series of small adjustments that old buildings make as the temperature falls and the timbers contract and the walls remember the shape they were meant to hold. Hapsworth walks along the passage toward the servants' staircase, the oil lamp casting a small circle of gold upon the flagstones before him. His footsteps are soft and measured, the footsteps of a man who knows every board and stone of this corridor and could walk it in total darkness without misstep. The brass fittings of the gas lamps that line the passage, lamps he has not yet cleaned but will attend to on another evening, catch the light of his oil lamp as he passes, each one sending a brief, warm greeting of reflected gold before falling back into shadow. He climbs the stairs, his hand upon the smooth wooden banister, his body moving with the slow, deliberate heaviness of approaching sleep. The stairs turn once, at a small landing with a window that looks out upon the kitchen garden, and through this window the rain is visible, falling gently upon the dark earth and the bare stems of the dormant plants. It is a peaceful thing, this rain, and Hapsworth pauses for a moment to watch it, to feel the deep, quiet satisfaction of being inside, in a warm house, at the end of a long and useful day, while the rain falls softly upon the world outside. He continues up the stairs and along the upper corridor to his room. It is a small room, plainly furnished, with a narrow bed and a washstand and a wooden chair and a small chest of drawers. There is a window with a curtain of white cotton, and through the curtain the rain taps gently, rhythmically, like the pulse of the night itself. He sets the oil lamp upon the washstand, turns the wick down low, and sits upon the edge of the bed to remove his shoes. His hands, which have been busy all evening with cloths and paste and needles and brass, are still warm from the work, and he looks at them for a moment, resting upon his knees, with a kind of quiet gratitude. They are not elegant hands. They are broad and thick-fingered, with calluses on the palms and small scars upon the knuckles, the accumulated marks of 30 years of working with metal and glass and fire. But they are capable hands, faithful hands, hands that know their business and do it well, and he is grateful for them, as he is grateful for the lamps and the tools and the room where the work is done. He lies down upon the bed and draws the blanket up to his chest. The oil lamp on the washstand has been turned so low that it gives only the faintest glow, a warm amber presence in the corner of the room that keeps the darkness at a comfortable distance without intruding upon his closing eyes. The rain continues upon the window, steady and unhurried, a companion to the night that asks nothing and offers everything. The house is still. The lamps are clean. The brass is polished. The wicks are trimmed. The valves are oiled. Everything that needed to be done has been done, and everything that needed to be set right has been set right, and the morning will find the house exactly as it should be, its lamps burning clearly, its fittings gleaming, its light falling steadily upon the rooms and the corridors and the people who move through them. Hapsworth's breathing slows. His eyelids, which have been heavy for some time now, close at last, and the small room, with its simple furniture and its tapping rain and its fading lamplight, becomes the whole of the world, as complete and as sufficient as the maintenance room where the evening's work was done. The lamps stand in their row upon the bench below, their brass warm, their glass clear, their burners ready, and they will stand there through the quiet hours of the night, waiting patiently for the morning, waiting to be carried back to their places and lit once more, to do again what they have always done, what they were made to do, which is to give light. And in this waiting, in this quiet patience of well-tended things resting through the hours of darkness, there is a kind of peace that extends beyond the lamps themselves, beyond the maintenance room and the passage and the staircase and the small, plain bedroom where Hapsworth lies, extending outward through the walls of the house and into the rain-softened night, a peace that has no boundary and no condition, that simply is, as the rain is, as the darkness is, as sleep is, a peace that asks nothing of you, dear listener, except that you allow it to settle around you like a blanket drawn up to your chin, warm and familiar and entirely without weight. The rain falls. The house is quiet. The lamps are clean. And somewhere, in a room that you need not find because it has already found you, a man who has spent his evening in the care of small, beautiful things is falling asleep to the sound of the rain, and you may fall asleep beside him, gently, easily, without effort or resistance, sinking into the soft, dark warmth of a night that has been well prepared for sleeping. Thank you for listening to me this evening and for allowing this calming story to sit beside you as the day draws to a close. If you have found some peace in these words, then, like the lamps on the bench, they have fulfilled their purpose. We welcome your return when your mind becomes restless late in the evening, only to find this room, this bench, this gentle rhythm of the fabric on the glass, waiting for you as always. Sleep well, dear listener. Sleep deeply and peacefully, and know that morning will come on its own. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like and comment. Good night.